Welcome to the 9 Lessons of Mastery to Live a More Excellent Life. I am J. Loren Norris, author of the 9 Lessons of Mastery, as well as Live a More Excellent Life, and creator of Insuperable.org. Today's lesson, Master Your Habits. Today's tool, butcher paper, a Whippet Chart, and a green Buick. The topic of today's lesson is identifying and tracking habits and the results they produce. The main point is creating awareness of habits and potential outcomes. Bad habits cloud your vision. This audio file is entitled Stupid Human Tricks. Why? Well, here's one of the exercises that I want you to do first. I want you to get out a roll of butcher paper or some giant piece of paper. It has to be blank. It can't just be like a big piece of newspaper. I want you to get some Scotch tape and I want you to stick that thing to the wall. I want you to get 3 Sharpie markers. 1 red, 1 green, and 1 black. I want you to put them together with that big giant piece of paper, a dry erase board, or white paper for your wall, whatever it is. If you've got an easel with a flip chart, that's a great thing. Those are perfect. I want you to draw 3 lines so that you can make 3 lists. I want a red list, a green list, and a black list, and put them side by side with each other. If you have butcher paper, it's ideal because you can just make this list go on for as long as you need to. Just kick that roll across the room and keep writing. Here's what I want you to do with the red Sharpie. I want you over the next 30 days to watch people. Watch people in your car. Watch people who are in traffic. Watch people who are at work or that you see in class. People that you might see in the mall. People that you might see in the airport. In the grocery store. Walmart's a great place to observe people. And I want you to make a list with your red Sharpie of all of the things that you see people do that just makes you want to scream or pull your hair out or throw sponges at them. Things like putting their makeup on while they're driving in the car. Stopping at a stoplight and picking their nose. Stopping at a stoplight and painting their toenails or their fingernails. Driving in traffic while reading a book and drinking a cup of coffee. Driving in traffic with no seatbelt on with their kids in the back seat with no seatbelt on. Driving in traffic with a kid in their lap. Walking through Walmart half dressed or in clothes that obviously look like they belong to their child. Walking through Walmart with no regard for any other human, just crashing into things and knocking things over. Yes, I've seen plenty of them. People at the airport are fun to observe as well. The purpose of this exercise is to write down the list of things that you see people doing that just irritate you and frustrate you. I'll tell you why in a moment. Next, I want you to use your green marker. And I want you to list all the things that you see other people do that you really admire. Perhaps you have a coworker who's always early for every meeting and they're fully prepared. They have everything they need for that meeting. And perhaps even extras. I mean, they didn't just come with their own spreadsheets, they came with copies for everyone. They didn't just come with a donut to eat while the meeting was going on, they came with donuts for everyone. They didn't just show up, they came ready. And they came early. Maybe it's the guy who lives next door to you and every day you see him running. He's out and he's running in the neighborhood early in the morning. He's stretching and he's getting his exercise and his yard is always immaculate and he's always trimming and mowing and all the things that you should be doing and many of us fail to do. Maybe it's that girl who every time you see her she just looks so perfectly put together. But you know she doesn't spend millions on her wardrobe. She just takes good care of her stuff and puts herself together very well. She never leaves home without her hair up, without her face done, without her nails done. Make note of those things. Maybe it's a study habit. Maybe it's the way they treat people. I like to observe, and I always admire when I see an old couple. And by old, I mean 60s, 70s, 80s years old, obviously been married more than a couple of weeks, and they walk in public still holding hands. When they get to a table, he pulls her chair out for her and waits for her to sit before he does. When they come to a doorway, he opens the door for her. Now, one of those teachable moments that I had to restrain myself with everything I had the other day because it was a good green pen moment and a red pen moment at the same time. I watched an elderly man walking into a building He took a couple of steps ahead of his lady. He let go of her hand. He reached for the door and pulled the door open. And as he opened the door, his frail, beloved wife was nearly run to the ground by 3 teenage boys and their father, who never even said thank you for opening the door. They just realized it was open and bursted through the door, nearly injuring her along the way. See, I would have easily written down the young men coming out the door on my red list, and the ones going in the door, especially the old man holding the door, on my green list. That's a habit that I hope I have as long as I have arms and legs to get up and open a door. On the black list, I want you to write down things that you see people do that are just consistent habits. This is not about judgment. It's not about good or bad. It's about just observation. What are some habits that you see people have that perhaps you don't have? What are some habits that you have that maybe you never thought of them before? Because generally we throw habits into 2 very distinct categories. I have a bad habit of smoking, or a bad habit of using foul language, or a bad habit of being late for everything. I have a good habit of going to bed on time, or getting up early, or I always drive the speed limit. Whatever it is, we usually have a pretty dichotomous look at habits. Sometimes we forget that habits are not just the things that are either extremely good or extremely bad, extremely productive or extremely unproductive. Sometimes they're the things that just, we do them the same way every single time, and we can't tell why. One example of that, you may have heard this story 1,000 times, but it goes to illustrate my point very well. There's a man who's been recently married, only a couple of years married to his wife, and every time his wife cooks a roast, she cuts both ends off before she puts it in the oven. He asked her one day, "Honey, why do you cut the ends off the roast?" She said, "That's just the way my mom taught me to cook. We've always done it that way." Well, he had the ideal opportunity at Christmas. And there's his lovely bride standing in the kitchen, and she's about to prepare the roast and put it in the oven, and she turns around to wash the potatoes, and sure enough, Mom steps up, cuts both ends off the roast, drops it in the pan. Daughter turns back around, throws the potatoes and carrots in the pan with the roast, and slaps the lid on it and sticks it in the oven. The young man turns to his mother-in-law and says, "Tell me, why is it you cut both ends off the roast before you put it in the oven?" And she said, I couldn't tell you. I learned it from my mother. I've always done it that way. And her daughter confirmed, "That's what you taught me. I've always done it that way as well." And golden moment opportunity arises, and Grandma walks in the room. And so the young man, very quizzical as he is, turns to Grandma and he says, "Grandma, why do you cut the ends off the roast before you put them in the pan?" She said, "I don't know. That drives me nuts that they both do that. I used to have to do it because my oven was so small, and that was the only way the roast would fit in the pan that would fit in the oven. I couldn't tell you why they still do it." How many things do you do in your life that they're just unconscious habits? You don't really think about them. You just realize that you do them. Let me bring that one home for you. I used to live in a neighborhood that when we bought into that neighborhood, we thought there would probably be 150 or maybe 200 homes tops. By the time we left that neighborhood, there were closer to 1,500 homes. They had to build their own elementary school in the neighborhood. It grew so fast. When we moved into the neighborhood, it was 20 miles from town. It was in the country, very isolated and very quiet. But as we lived in that neighborhood and it grew, the highway became overwhelmed. It couldn't handle that many homes. They had to put up 5 new stoplights. Now, the first couple of years that I lived in that home, because I always back into the driveway, I would pull out of the driveway and turn left. I would go to the nearest stop sign. I would turn left. I would go 2 blocks. I would turn right. I would be on the highway with 3 turns, very little waiting time, and I'm on the highway and zoom in myself to work. After a couple of years when they built a new school, though, pulling out of my driveway and turning left meant I would get caught behind the bus before I even got to the first stop sign. And as I wait for the little munchkins to get on the bus, we get to the stop sign. Now there's 5 or 6 cars in front of me at the stop sign, and now we turn left. After 5 or 6 minutes just getting off my own street, I turn into the main road of the neighborhood, where I find there's 2 more bus stops, 27 little kids on bicycles, and moms with their strollers pushing their kids to the elementary school that they built right in the neighborhood. We now have 4 school zones. So much for calling the boss to tell him I'll be late. I turn right on the stop sign, and I drive to the top of the school zone where I wait behind the crosswalk as the little kids and moms with strollers cross back and forth across the road to get to the school. By the time I get to the light, I'm so frustrated and ready to pull my hair out, I've already finished my coffee and I still have 25 minutes to drive to town. I've also burned up more time trying to get out of the neighborhood than I ever did before getting all the way to work. Ironically, there's a back way out of the neighborhood. And if I just pull out of my driveway and turn right again, and then left again, and then follow the long U, I can turn left, and I'm on another highway that cuts through the Texas Motor Speedway, and I have no traffic until I'm all the way past all 4 school zones and almost into town. But the habit that I built over the first 2 years of living in that neighborhood, pulling out of the driveway and turning left, so many days ruined my work day, ruined my mood, ruined my attitude, drank up my coffee, wasted my fuel, wasted my time, and just plain frustrated me because I had a habit of turning left. That's not a good habit or a bad habit, but the results of that habit bring us to the next thing that I call a Whippet Chart. That's to look at a habit that may be on the blacklist. It's not a good habit or a bad habit. It's just something you do all the time. Well, why do you do it that way? Maybe you need to ask that question. What if I cut off the roast on both ends every time I do that? Have I just lost 2 servings? Am I putting a $12, $15 roast in the oven and throwing away $3 worth of meat before I even start? Why do I do that? Is there a practical reason? Or is it just a habit? Why do I turn left every time I go out of the driveway? Do I live in a cul-de-sac and I don't have a choice? My encouragement to you is simply to think through each of these things. To build a chart maybe like a decision tree, or like an organizational chart where you have the hierarchy of needs. Bring back that relative weight of importance. What really matters to you? And then let's compare those in that, what I call a Whippet chart. Here's what Whippet stands for. It's the what if process. What if every day I go to work I turn left out of my driveway? Well, if I do that every day, I can expect a few things that I know for sure. I can expect it'll take me longer to work, so I better leave earlier. I can expect it's going to take 2 cups of coffee, not 1, to get to work. I can expect to use more fuel, so I should allow that in my budget. I can expect it's going to raise my blood pressure, raise my stress level, and lower my effective level when I get to work. Now, if those are conditions that I don't want to work in, I have a choice. I can go right when I come out of my driveway. How many little things in your life are the little things that you do every day just because they're habits? And you never really thought about what would happen if I stopped doing that, or what's going to happen if I keep doing that. I want you to make that chart. I want you to take all those things in the red list, the green list, and the black list, and ask yourself, what if I keep doing that? What if I stop? You might also remember the illustration from the 6 building blocks of an insuperable vision. When I talk about having a vision to see my youngest daughter married, she just turned 17 years old. I'm a diabetic and I love pecan pie. But if I eat too much pecan pie, I can be guaranteed I will not be there when my daughter gets married. That is not a good thing. That is not a decision that I want to make. But I have to put that into the Whippet chart in the what if process and ask myself, what if I eat that much sugar on a regular basis? Well, I can guarantee you there are some effects. They're pretty well annotated in the history of diabetes, the things that are going to happen to my body if I continue to let my sugar run out of control. What things do you have in your life that you simply haven't asked yourself, what happens if I keep doing that? Now, you're probably asking yourself, what is it I'm supposed to do with all these things that I notice about other people? Why do I care that I notice them about other people? You ever heard Zig Ziglar's green Buick theory? He didn't call it that, I do. Here's what Zig Ziglar says. Have you ever noticed how the day you buy a green Buick, it seems like everybody in the world has one? There's a little mechanism in the human brain called the reticular activating system. It's designed to cause you to remember various things. generally associating with sleep. But the reticular activating system seems to trigger in the human mind as well when you notice things about others. And the reason you notice them is because your reticular activating system has already identified them in you. See, we don't like that to be true. But you probably heard that. It takes one to know one, the old kids phrase. Yeah, you might be a little anal retentive. If anal retentive people really bug you, it probably is true. That may not be a reality that you like, but it probably is true. I remember asking a group of high school students that I mentor, what are some of the things that bug you most about others? 3 girls raised their hands right away, and all 3 of them had comments about the way other girls drive. When they finished, I asked them, how many of you do those things when you drive? The first 3 hands in the room to go up were the same 3 girls. And they looked at each other and burst into laughter, realizing I had never thought that I do that and how much it annoys me about others. See, the same is true of many things in your life. When you begin to build a vision for your life, the more often you see the things like that, the more real it becomes to you. The other nice thing about the reticular activating system is that it doesn't know the difference between imagination and real. So when you imagine strongly enough, with emotion strongly enough, with a picture vividly enough, the reticular activating system begins to say, oh, that is your car. Yeah, okay, I remember that. I remember that car. I have to see it in your driveway now. And your mind doesn't know the difference. It just keeps reconciling the two. It keeps trying to make them the same. If you will, rather than focus on your bad habits, now that you've identified them, not because you caught yourself doing them, but because you saw other people doing them and realized how ridiculous they were and how badly they irritated you. Now you can begin to mark those things off your list, or at least ask yourself, do I want to keep doing that? What if I do? Take that habit through the what if process. Here's another thing. Remember that we tend to get in life the things that we think about, focus on the most. If you think about your bad habits, that's what you'll find yourself doing. But if you can make that green list of things, those things that, like if I want to play in the NFL, I need to create a new habit of running every day so that I can be in great shape, catching 1,000 balls a day so that I can have great hands. If that's the case, then you might identify some of those things on your green habit list of other people's good habits and begin to incorporate them in your life. Notice those habits like fitness, those habits like diet, those habits like study habits. Notice those in others. Focus your attention on those good things that are going to make the quality of your life even better. And then add them to your Whippet Chart. What if I did run 8 miles every day? Man, in a year, I'd be ready for a marathon. What if I did drop 20 pounds and got off my diabetic medication altogether? Man, I could save so much money on medications and prolong my life and my health and my condition and my abilities so much greater. What if you did skip 1 cup of coffee a day and put that in a coffee can somewhere and saved it up for Christmas presents? Even those on the tightest budget can probably find 1 or 2 little things in their life that by changing that one habit, they can make things so much better in another area. What if you did? Thank you again for joining me on this journey, the 9 lessons of mastery to live a more excellent life. Whatever you do, do not settle for the life that was handed you. Live a more excellent